Some parents make love feel safe, other parents make love feel like that. And I think this is why the Ilya story from Heated Rivalry hit so hard. Because for Ilya, family's love was never just love. Care was never just care. Family's love always came with obligation, debt, guilt, shame, and everything. And of course, somewhere along the way he learned that being loved means also owing something back. After my first video about Ilya's childhood, I kept thinking how universal this is. It's not only about Russia. Different cultures have different versions of it, but this guilt-based parenting exists everywhere. The child is made responsible for parents' emotions, for family's pride, the country, the debt, everything. And the result is often the same. You grow up feeling like you're never quite enough, you don't do enough, you never become the person you were supposed to be. I don't want to discuss perfect parents, right? I don't want to idealize fictional parents, fictional characters. No, I just want to talk about 3 traits of emotionally safe parents that I notice in pop culture. The first trait is respect. Respect your child as a person. The second trait is separateness. And the third one, I think this is the most advanced one and the most interesting one, is the emotional safety without risking your child from pain. So this is not going to be a 2-hour childhood trauma video, though it could be. And I want to discuss what kind of parenting moments made me stop and think, okay, this is how it can look like. Welcome back to my channel. Here I talk about TV characters, scenes, and the emotional logic behind them. We talk a lot about Heated Rivalry. Today we do that as well, but also with some other new examples. So don't forget to subscribe and let's start. So, and the first trait I want to discuss is respect. Respect in many forms. And in my culture, and maybe in your culture as well, let me know, it's very common to love your child, like it goes without saying, but not to respect your child as a person. And here are 3 examples how it's portrayed in the shows, right? And one of the best examples is apologizing to your kid, right? And when I first watched Heated Rivalry, I was shocked when David and Yuna both apologized to Shane in episode 6. David apologized for coming unannounced, and Yuna apologized for not making him feel safe to come and talk to her. I was shocked because as a kid, I never got apologies from an adult. This is something you don't do, and even right now, when I'm an adult, don't get any apologies from my family members, from my family of origin members, right? The default scenario for the scene in my head would be Yuna definitely not apologizing to Shen, but and trying to make this about her, saying like, so why are you here for us for many years, and this is how you think we deserve to find out about your relationship, sexuality and everything. And another example of respecting your child is respecting emotional space and privacy as well. So, and if we talk about privacy, the best example here is David from Heated Rivalry, Shane's father, because I love this moment from episode 6 when he says something about their phones, which clearly means that he already got Ilya's phone number and that he was so traumatized by everything what happened. So now he would call everyone in that house before coming because he respects their privacy. He respects Shane's privacy. And if that loon had a phone, David would have definitely asked that loon's phone number to call before coming to Shane's house. I'm pretty sure about that. And if we talk about emotional space, a great example here is Kip's father from episode 3 of Heated Rivalry. I feel like I don't talk enough about Kip and Scott's story. We need to mention Kip's father, because when Kip comes to his father all disappointed, sad and crying, his father doesn't make it about himself. He does not instantly ask for explanations. So he doesn't make Kip's pain about his father's right to know what happened. My default option would be he would not be supportive. And secondly, he would also try to make it about himself, trying to also guilt Kip for disappearing for several months. Right? And this is why this is so healing, right? Because you have your default option in your head, but then you see that something different is happening on screen, and you feel like, okay, this is how it can look like. Let me know your default options for all of these examples. I would be very glad to read. So, and another example is Nick's mom from Heartstopper. I have been watching Heartstopper recently, and I love her. Oh, Charlie is a really special friend, isn't he? You look more like yourself around Charlie than around your actual friends. But she just gently notices, but she does not require a confession out of Nick instantly. And the last example of respecting your child for me is allowing imperfection. And the best example here is Yuna in episode 1, when she tries to talk to Shane about some business, hockey stuff and everything, and Shane is looking at Ilya on the eyes. To me, it reads like, oh, he doesn't have to be perfectly pleasant all the time to still be loved. So he doesn't need to bring the most polished version of himself to his parents in order to be loved, without any disrespect. But that approach is key for me, because you don't have to hide your dark side. Yeah, I think it's very sad when people become adults and they try to hide their dark side as much as they can, because they used to feel ashamed of it and they used to hide it so they can get love from other people. I think it's a really, really sad and very hard experience to have. The next trait is let your child be separate from you, to have their own feelings, desires, plans and everything. So this is basically about not trapping your child in their old role of a child, subordinate or investment project, right? And this is actually what Ilya's father Grigori does in the series. So for him, Ilya is kind of an investment project. You are my subordinate, you are my project. I already know what you should do. When a child becomes an investment project, that means that love is conditional on fulfilling certain conditions of this project. You cannot simply exist with your desires, with your plans and everything. You have to justify the cost of being raised. So it may sound a bit stupid, but for me it feels like when you're born you sign a contract that you owe me. You don't remember, but I remember, and I can remind you whenever I want about this. And what you need to have with an investment project, you need to have a good return on investment. And that means that this child has to justify all the costs, money, energy, effort, resources and everything that has been spent on raising him up. This is the model that makes Ilya's relationship with his family so painful to watch, and it triggered to me a lot when I watched it, because a lot of things that Ilya did for his family I also did myself to prove myself as a good investment project to my family, to my parents. And I think the opposite parenting approach would be not punishing your kids for different sexuality, different plans, different feelings. And two examples that I want to give here are really good examples. First is Yuna, because she does not simply accept Shane when he comes out to her. She does not treat his private life and his confusion as his betrayal of her. She does not make it about herself, saying like, how could you betray me? Like, do you know how it makes me feel as a mother? Instead, her reaction is closer to, I did not make it clear that it is safe to come to me and talk to me. And this is such a different type of parenting, because everything he said, his confusion, sexuality, private life, will not be used against him. And I have to mention here Mr. Perlman from Call Me By Your Name. I think it's a great example of very wise parenting, but still not perfect parenting. And he is a great contrast to Grigori, to Ilya's father, I think. If you haven't watched Call Me By Your Name, I highly recommend to watch it. I will give you a spoiler alert when spoilers gonna follow. Okay, he's the father of the main character there, the main parent in the show. And when I first watched the movie, I was like, I cannot even imagine telling my parents even a quarter of that story that happened to Elio in the movie. And Mr. Perlman, you everything, but I cannot even imagine telling this. And this vulnerability would be used against me for the rest of my life. What surprises me that Mr. Perlman doesn't guilt trip Elio, and he makes it clear that he won't do it. His only worry was, I want to have this door open enough for Elio to come and talk to me about this experience or anything in his life whenever he needed it. Maybe it's hard to do in real life. Let me know in the comments. I don't have kids of my own. I want to become a mom someday, but now I'm in more of a reflection mode myself. But I think it makes a lot of sense to me, because the more you guilt trip your kid, or anyone actually, the less they're gonna tell you, because why would they, right? And it also works with friends and partners and everyone in your life, right? If I feel like I'm gonna be judged for what I'm gonna say and this being gonna be used against me later in my life, I won't be telling you about this, right? That's logic. And this is not what Mr. Perlman does. I love his phrase, how you live your life is your business. So Elio has his own life, emotions, inner world, and Mr. Perlman doesn't need to know everything about that. And finally, part 3, more advanced parenting. As I think about it, it's about parents who can witness pain of their child without controlling it and without rescuing their kid from this pain. And here we're also going to talk about Mr. Perlman from Call Me By Your Name, the best example out there. So as a safe parent, Mr. Perlman doesn't try to prevent any painful experience in Elio's life. Instead, he asks a harder question. Is this pain or danger? Is this something he can tolerate, something he can handle? If yes, then I'm gonna let this happen to him. I used to think that good parenting means minimizing any pain in your child's life. It sounds about right to me, like it's about some self-sacrifice, it's about protecting your child, and sometimes this is exactly what a parent should do. But not all pain is danger, and some painful experiences are a must in order to become a responsible, good, and adult person. And it turns out that parents' role isn't always to prevent a painful experience. Sometimes it's to provide some safe, emotional space for your kid after that. And this is what Mr. Perlman does. Spoiler alert, use the time code to scroll. Within the story, Mr. Perlman understands that this whole relationship between Elio and Oliver gonna hurt Elio, but he doesn't treat this pain as danger. And I think it takes a lot of judgment from a parent to separate pain and danger. And he trusts that Elio has enough capacity, enough emotional maturity to handle this relationship with Oliver, and also to handle all this pain when Oliver leaves. Because from the very beginning, it's clear that Oliver is going to leave. Instead of prohibiting everything to happen between Elio and Oliver, Mr. Perlman decides to let it happen, and he decides to become a safe emotional space for Elio afterwards, after Oliver leaves. And moreover, Mr. Perlman encourages Elio to feel everything, not to go numb and feel nothing and escape any happiness if it comes also with some pain. This whole speech that he gives to Elio and this type of parental wisdom is so moving. And the best part that he decides not to shame Elio for anything that happened. And there are a lot of things that he could shame him for. He doesn't turn this pain into failure. Because my default option would be, if this happened to you, that was a lesson. You need to learn a lesson. If you won't learn your lesson, I will tell you what lesson was it and what to do. I will come to you and remind you of that situation, and you will feel ashamed for that. So that was my take on emotionally safe parents and some of the main traits that I wanted to highlight, to notice and to discuss with you. I think they show small moments how parents choose love over control, choose support over shame. For me, these are the examples of emotionally safe and inspiring parenting, which are the complete opposite of Ilya's upbringing. Yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Maybe we need to discuss other examples, other shows in the same format. I would be glad to talk about it more, to reflect on it, and to become better at navigating the world of parents and their kids. Thank you for watching this video. Appreciate it so much. Don't forget to subscribe and see you in the next video. Bye bye.